Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this discussion of the Brittany Drexel case. Now, the Brittany Drexel case, I'm familiar with this case because I remember seeing it on the show Disappeared a few years ago when the show was still in production. And this case really stuck out to me because it was a young teenage girl who wanted to go to Myrtle Beach for spring break with a group of her friends. Her parents had said no, and so she lied to her family and said that she was going to be staying with a friend within her town, but she ends up leaving for Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and she ends up disappearing. And when you think about all the crazy things that you did as a teenager and all the lies that you told your parents, this case is very, very relatable, and that's what makes it even more scary. So Brittany Drexel was 17 years old from Rochester, New York. She disappeared in April of 2009 on spring break in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. She had lied to her parents about where she was going. Her boyfriend had to alert her parents when all communications from Brittany had completely stopped. So Brittany and her boyfriend were in constant communication with each other, and when he could no longer get in touch with her, he had to go to her parents and break the news to them that Brittany did not go to her friend's house. She actually went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina with a group of her other friends. So the last footage of Brittany, it was the surveillance video of her leaving her hotel and walking down the street, and then she walks out of frame, and then she's never seen again. And that was so eerie. So the initial speculation from the show Disappeared was that the people that she had traveled with might have something to do with her disappearance or might have known what happened to her, but that went absolutely nowhere. So we find out this week that Raymond Douglas Moody, a 62-year-old registered sex offender, is the one responsible for her abduction, rape, and death. He was able to lead authorities to where he had buried her, which was 50 miles from the area that she was last seen. The authorities speculate that she was murdered around April the 25th, 2009. He left her body in a wooded area, and the cause of death was strangulation. They were able to prove or confirm Brittany's identity through DNA and dental records. It's a very, very sad case, but we have to be grateful that there is some type of resolution. Now, this Raymond Douglas Moody character, he had served 21 years in prison in California for raping and abducting children. And then when he was released after 21 years, he moved to South Carolina and committed this heinous act. Now, there's been a lot of discussion online about whether sex offenders should ever be released, because it seems like, with sex offenders, unless they go through some very serious, intense therapy, when they're let back into society, they go back to their old ways. It's just this I don't know, this innate thing in them to victimize people. Their victims are children, women, men. It's just something within them. So, and in this particular case, this culprit went from raping and abducting children to murder. So there's a lot of discussion on both sides about, they should not be released. And then the other side saying that, they've paid their debt to society. They have every right to live freely in society, of course, with certain limitations, such as reporting to, registering as sex offenders, wherever they move to. But other than that, they should be allowed to live their lives. So yeah, there's that discussion going on. There was another person named in her death by the name of Timothy Deshaun Taylor. Prison informants had told FBI that they had actually witnessed Mr. Taylor abduct and murder Brittany Drexel, but that information was completely false. So that particular suspect has been cleared. It's just a huge satisfaction that this case, which has been a mystery for 13 years, has now been solved. Hopefully her parents will have some type of resolution, some type of peace within them, and they're able to put their daughter to rest. When I thought about the Brittany Drexel case, it reminded me of two other cases that I had seen on Disappeared that ended up being solved years and years and years later. The one that comes to mind is the case of the McStay family. That's another case that I had seen on Disappeared, where an entire family had completely vanished into thin air. It was a mother, a father, and their two little boys. And I remember one of the scariest moments when I watched that episode was when they went to the McStay's family home and had seen it looked as if they were about to have dinner or something, because there was food out, little bowls for the the children, and then they were gone. So it was like they were in the middle of having dinner or something, and then something just caused them to leave their house. And this was a mystery for years and years. And it was one of those cases where you felt like would never be solved. Like, what could have happened to an entire family? So finally, that case was solved. I think it was the father's business partner that was the culprit in that case, and he was convicted of their murders. And then the other case that comes to mind that really frustrated me when I watched this case, because to me it was so obvious who the perpetrators were, but because there wasn't enough evidence, they got away with this case, I think, for like 20 years. And it's the case of Mike Williams. And this was the case where his wife had said he went fishing one day and he never came home. And they claimed that he was eaten by alligators. And his mother never believed that her son was eaten by alligators. She even had talked to like a professor in that area who was an expert in marine biology, who said that alligators will not feed on humans when it's a certain temperature. Like if it's really, really cold, alligators would not feed on humans, or something to that effect. So the mother had gone to the ends of the earth advocating for her son, that this did not happen to her son. He did not fall over in his fishing boat and got eaten up by alligators. And it was obvious that the wife had something to do with her husband's death, because as soon as this guy disappeared, the wife and the best friend got married. And it was like so obvious that they had something. It was like within months of him disappearing, they got married. The wife got rid of all of Mike Williams' stuff. It was like he never existed in her life, and she married his best friend. And it was just like, okay, seriously, y'all can't link this in any way to the death of this man. But 20 years later, when I found out that this woman was convicted, I was like, oh my God, there is a God. I could not believe that they finally got it right after 20 years. But she was convicted, and she's sitting in prison right now where she should be. The friend, I don't think, was ever convicted of the murder. I think he was convicted on other stuff, because in exchange for his testimony, they had agreed not to charge him with the murder, I think, even though he was the one that actually killed the man. Anyways, it doesn't matter. She got convicted, and I think he's sitting in jail too. So that case was finally solved, because that was the case that frustrated me the absolute most, because it was so obvious on what happened to this man. But thank God justice was served. So those are three cases that I had seen on Disappeared that ended up being solved. Praise be to God. And yeah, if you made it this far in my video, I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to rate the video on your way out, and I will definitely talk to you later.